Collaborative governance is a model. It's a way of bringing a group of stakeholders to a final decision in a very collaborative way, but it's essentially both about collaboration but also and very strongly about decision making, which is why the word governance comes into it. I think there's a very key initial piece of advice, which is about understand the model before you try to use it. So the first step of the model is exactly that. It's bringing the organisation that wants to collaborate together to really explore their mindset about collaboration. We have found over the years that people may well talk about collaboration, but they haven't fully understood the implications. If you collaborate with a group of people, then you are to some degree relinquishing the command and control power that perhaps you actually enjoy. If you share power, in my view, you become stronger. But for some people that's counterintuitive, and they find that to be quite a difficult space to step into. Governance is a new word that suddenly seemed to come into our language about 5 or 10 years ago. Before that, if you used the gov word, you usually were talking about government. But over the last few years, there's been more and more focus on the process of decision making. Who makes the decision? On what basis do they make the decision? What information do they need to make sure they're making a wise decision? All of that comes under the heading of governance. And what we're talking about here is a model, a journey that has a very definite end. And the end is finding solutions to problems or answers to questions, but we do it together and we take the journey together. But there are very clear points in the journey, milestones in the journey, that we have to tick ourselves off before we progress to the next one. And that gives a roadmap, which sometimes gives people a little bit of confidence that they can start the journey. One of our clients has called our model the hope machine, because it gives people hope at the beginning that there is a way to get to the end, even though it may look a bit daunting to start with. Success at the beginning of the model looks a little bit unattainable. That's why you need some confidence to start the process. This model works when we really struggle to see how we can solve a particular problem or how we can create something that works for everyone. Some of the big problems in our society are starting to look a little bit challenging to solve. Some of the big ones that we're obviously talking about a lot these days: climate change, obesity, crime, youth, and how to take youth from the 15-year-old excited, exuberant young person to the adult of 25 or 30, and those difficult years in the middle. How do we help young people, particularly young men, to get through them? And there are no easy answers. There's no expert that can come in and give you a silver bullet to solve these problems. The only way that you can solve them is to share them, to open them up, to have people understand the problem from a range of perspectives and then start working together to solve it. So the governance aspect is being very clear. Where are we going? What do we need to solve? What does it look like from everybody's perspective? What process can we use that helps us to understand who's going to make the decision, who's going to have what role in that decision making, and how we're going to do it together? Then doing it, then finding the solutions, and the final step is about how do we implement those solutions. If we own them, then it's much easier for people who've been part of the decision-making process to step into the implementation, to put their hands up and say, I'll do that bit, I can see how that needs to be done, I'd like to do that. Whereas if people don't own that solution, then they're much less likely to step into the implementation. One of the examples that I think would be most useful is one in the health sector, and more organisations, particularly those people who are looking at primary healthcare, the healthcare that happens in the community rather than the healthcare that happens in hospitals. And more patients, that is consumers of healthcare, are wanting more of a say in what services are delivered to us in our community and how can we access them. We've been a bit physician focused, doctor focused, administrator focused in making decisions about what healthcare is appropriate, and experts have a very definite role. We can't exclude experts from decision making, but experts don't know everything. Doctors don't know how people feel about their healthcare, about where they want to get it in a particular community. They don't recognise that sometimes having to go to 6 different places to see 6 different healthcare providers is a frustration for people, and if there could be a one-stop shop, or that kind of a solution, or a decision about how families can best access the services that they need, it needs those consumers to be part of the decision making, to share the decision making respectfully. And unfortunately, I do find from my experience that there are people who perhaps are very highly qualified in their own sphere who are very reluctant to bring less qualified people into decision making, even when they obviously, or at least in my mind it's obvious, that they have something to contribute. So that's sometimes the challenge, that mindset, or that appreciative mindset that says people have something to add to this and I want them in there.